I want us to take a look at HTML colors in this video, which you can actually use three approaches to be able to actualize them. And the first one is the common color name, things like white, black, yellow. Just write about any common color name that you know. You can actually name that, type it correctly, and then you have a result. But after that, we also have the one that is actually called the RGB. And RGB simply stands for red, green, and that of the blue, which are just the primary colors that we have. You can just look for ways to actually combine them by setting volumes to be able to formulate other colors. And after that, we have the one that is actually called the hexadecimal values. And with hexadecimal values, you just basically need to use that of the base 16 type of base to be able to formulate some colors. And we're going to see as well, I'm going to just demonstrate that in the video. So without wasting more time, let's just dive right in and then see how is it that we can actually use these three approaches to make colors in our HTML. All right, so let's first of all throw in our HTML boilerplate. I'm going to just basically copy and paste right here. And what I basically want to do is just change the title right here. So let's just call this HTML colors, and we can basically copy this title right here and then use that as our H1. So I'm going to just say H1 and paste what I just copied and then close that out right here. So this is going to be H1. And what I'm going to do right now is, let me just first of all save this page. And if I save it right now, I want to save it to the main folder that we have been working on. So I'm going to save that with something like colors. Let's just call this maybe HTML colors, like that dot HTML, and we can go ahead and save that. And we basically can access this on our browser. If we go to HTML colors, open that up, you notice that we just have HTML colors on the page. So we just basically want to experiment with how to basically use colors, right? And I'm going to do that within the body, and we're going to start off with basically, let's throw in some tags right here. So I want to throw in p tag is going to be, let's say, number one. We're going to just basically call this common color names, like your black, red. Okay, so let's put that right here. Let's just say something like red, black. We have green. We basically have quite a lot of them. Okay, and let's just close out the p tag in here. And after we deal with this, there is another way to actually deal with HTML colors, which is basically called RGB values. So I'm going to change this to number 2, and let's call that RGB values. So I'm going to delete this and call this RGB values. And this RGB values primarily comprises of the common colors, the primary colors, which is actually red. And after red, we have I think we have green. And after green, the next one that we have is basically I think that's called a blue. So let's just say blue. So these are the primary colors that we have. Okay, then the third one, we are going to go with what is called a hexadecimal. So I'm gonna just say hexadecimal values, and it's actually in a form where we have to combine something like binary numbers, okay, to be able to do that. We're going to get to that place as we move along. Let's start off with this particular one, number 1, which talks about the common color name, and we've been dealing with colors before now. So for instance, let's say we want to change the background of this particular web page, and we're basically going to make use of it. We're going to use that opportunity to experiment with the common color names that we know, and to do that is actually very simple. So we're going to enter an attribute called style right here, and let's set that to the following color names. So I'm going to just, the first one I want to make use of right now is, let's say that page is actually going to be something like blue, and we can terminate. If you save this web page and then go to our browser and refresh, you notice that that's actually not showing. So let's find out why that is. Okay, we have a style right here, but we need to include a property right here, which is called a color. So I'm going to save that and then go back. If we refresh, we should have blue as the background of this particular web page. What am I even doing? I think it should be background color, not just color. However, that's pretty cool for changing the color of the text in there. Okay, but what I wanted to do was to just say background dash color. Okay, so this should be background dash color, and if we refresh that web page, you should be able to see the background of the whole web page changed to what it is right now. Okay, that's what I wanted to basically experiment with. And just write about any color name that you know. If you want to change this to something like yellow or something like red, you save this to refresh, you're going to see red right there. See that we now have red. So it basically write about any color that you want to use. If you want to use green, it's also possible. For any common color name that you know, you can use it right there, and you're going to notice that once you refresh, it's going to actually change and then give you that particular color. And as simple as that, it can be navy, it can be khaki, it can be just what about any common color name that you know. Go ahead and then put that in there. Okay, so that's just how to experiment with that of the common color name. And we want to move ahead to experimenting with the next one, which is basically going to be that of the RGB. Okay, all right, so to explain this RGB right now, the thing is that it's actually in a combination of the primary colors that we have in here. Okay, it's going to be in form of a parameters. You need to bring in a particular volume of a red color, combine it with a certain color or a volume of a green color, and then mix that with a certain volume of that of the blue that we have here. So these three things are the common, the primary colors that we have. So you need to like combine two of them to be able to get a particular color that you want. So we're going to do it in such a way that you are going to like bring in this particular format. You're going to just say something like RGB, which are the common colors that you can actually use, and you are actually expected to like set a certain quantity or volume of the red. After you set that, you also set a certain quantity of that of the green, and the same thing applies to that of the blue. Okay, which you can basically, if let's say for instance right now you are going to like set it between the values of 0, and I want to put this in brackets. So this is going to be between the value of 0 to that of the value called a 255 like this. Okay, so the values that you are going to actually set is going to be between these two values that we have in here. Okay, so this is just basically like showing you the syntax. I'm going to do that right here for you to actually understand what I basically mean. So when you are beginning to set values, make sure that you set the values that are just within these ranges. Okay, and let's just take a look at that. Let's experiment with that right here. Let's say we want to change the background of that web page from what it is. We have green already here. We want to change it to another color. So I'm going to just say RGB, and what I'm going to do right here is to go ahead and set a certain quantity of that of the green first of all. I mean the red. Okay. So to set a certain quantity of the value red, let me say that I'm going to just set it to something like 255, which is basically 255 volume of red. And after that, I'm going to introduce a comma and then go ahead and then bring a certain quantity of green. Let's say that what I'm going to bring for that of the green right now is going to be something like, let's say 255 again, or let's say something like 0. And after that, we can go ahead and then set something like 0 again for that of the blue. Okay, so this is basically going to produce something like a green background, I mean a red background, because the quantity of red that is in here right now is too great. Okay, it's greater than the rest of the quantities that we have in here, so it's basically going to produce a red color for us. So I'm going to save this right now, and if I go back to the browser and I refresh, let's see what it's going to give us. And you see that we'll have a red background right there. Okay, you see how that is actually done. So you just basically need to set a certain volume of red color and then a certain volume of that of the green color, and you combine that with a certain volume of that of the blue color. Okay, so if you combine these three things right here, it's going to just basically give you red, as you have just seen from the browser. Okay, so let's say for instance we want to get like a black background. Okay, right here where we are right now, I want to change the background of this place to black. The way that this is done is really very simple. You just have to set all of the values that we have here into 0. Okay, so I'm going to just say 0 right here. So it means we have 0 volume of red, 0 volume of green, and then 0 volume of that of the blue. So if you save this web page right now and I refresh right here, you're going to see that we have black background, and of course the text that we have on this page is no longer visible, but you can actually change the color of the text right here. So if you add another let's say another value right here with a property called a color, and we'll go ahead and set that maybe to something like white. Okay, we're going to use common color to set the color right here. Okay, you see that we have if we refresh, the text is actually going to appear in white color. All right, so that's just how to get a black background if you want to do that. And you basically can also set it to some other values that you imagine to actually get. For instance, if you want to get something like a white background, I believe if you set this, so I'm going to first of all take away this color because it's white already. It's going to fiddle with what I want to do right now. Let's say I want to get a white background. Okay, I'm going to basically set this to 255 comma 255 comma we are going to just say 255. Okay, some quantities. If I save this right here, and I refresh the web page, I should be able to get a white background. You see that I have a white background right now. So the background right here is white. Okay, so if you want to get green, let's say we want to get a green background. How do we do this? We're going to basically like increase, let's reduce the quantity of this first one, which is red. I'm going to just reduce it to 0, and I'm going to leave this particular one right here, which is basically that of the green. I'm going to leave it to 255, and I want to reduce this one to something like 0. And if I save, I should be able to get something like let's say a green background right there. Okay, because the volume of the green background is actually very high right here. So if I refresh this web page, you see that we have a green background. Okay, so how do we also get, if we want to get something like a blue background, we can also do that. We can go ahead and set this to 0, and then go ahead and set this one to 255. So I want to set this to 255, and I save. And if I refresh my web page, you're going to notice that we have basically blue background right there. So pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. So that's just basically how you are going to like mix those colors to be able to get. All right, so the next thing that we want to take a look at right now is going to be that of the number 3 right here. Let's just make that number 3, which is right about hexadecimal values. And with this hexadecimal values, I want you to just basically understand that his hexadecimal values are like values. I mean, in HTML, a color can actually be specified using the hexadecimal value, and it's most of the time in this particular format. So I'm going to give you something like a syntax right now. We will need to like include the hash right here, and after that we're going to just do something like you need to follow the RGB format that we used before, but in this case it's going to be like in two value pairs. Okay, this time around it's going to be something like RR for the red, and we're going to have GG for the green, and after that we're going to have BB for that of the blue. Okay, and I want you to just basically understand that anytime we talk about hexadecimal values, this is basically in base 16. Okay, in base 16, and if we want to represent that, I think it actually ranges from 0 to that of the 9. So I'm going to just say 0 to 9. Okay, so and these values actually, if you just do an arrow right here, this means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 right there. Okay, so it ranges from 0 anyway. So let me add 0 right here to that of the 9. And if you want to get other values right now, the other values that you can actually get, you should be able to get them from A, B, C, D, E, F like this. So we need to like look for ways that we can actually combine the things that we have on the screen right now to be able to get a color for us. Okay, so let me just introduce commas in here, and introduce a comma right here, introduce a comma, just like that. So we need to look for ways that we can actually combine these colors that we have in here to be able to like grab onto the desired colors that we actually want to grab. Okay, so that's just what that is. And every time we really talk about hexadecimal value, I want you to always use this particular format. I want to add a hash. You want to specify a certain number of that of the add value. After that, you specify a certain value or volume of that of the green, and after that you grab onto that of the blue. And we're going to experiment with that as we move along right now. So for instance, let's say we want to make something like a yellow out of these values that we have in here right now. So if we want to make yellow in here, what we need to do, I want to take away this which we had earlier, and if we save right now and refresh, I don't think we should be able to have any background right now. It should go back to the default. Okay, let's say we want to make something like yellow out of the background that we have in here, but we're going to like basically follow the hexadecimal value kind of a stuff. So what I want to do right now is that I'm going to introduce a hash. This is the first thing that we have in here, and after that we need to introduce that of the red. Okay, so to introduce the red, remember that it's going to be in page, so we're going to just say something like FF right there, and after that we need to also set a certain value for that of the green, which can basically be also FF right there, and we can go ahead and then set that of the blue. Okay, let's say that the volume of the blue that we have want to add right now is going to be something like 00. Okay, and if we have that right now, let me say I save this web page. If I refresh, should be able to see something like a yellow background. You see that, and you don't have to like have these things in your mind. You don't need to like cram them in your mind to be able to do this. Okay, so all right, so basically those F that we have in here, they are basically set to their highest values in their spectrum. You see that anywhere you find the value of F normally has a higher precedence over any other value that we have in here. And if we want to change this, let's say we want to change this to something like red, we can basically not red, but let's say that, yeah, if you want to change it to red, I think that's actually red. You can change these two values right here to something like 00, and what that means is that you have just increased the value of that of the red. So FF is bigger than 00 right here. So if we save this right now and then we'll refresh the web page, I think we should be able to have something like a red background. So let's save, and you see that we'll have a red background. So if you want to have a green background, it's also possible. All you need to do is maybe basically we can just change this to 00, and then we can change the middle one right here to something like, let's say, FF, okay, and then save, and then we should be able to have something like a green background right there. So let's refresh, and we'll have a green background. And some other ones, like let's say you want to set a blue background, you can change this to 00, and then change this the last 2 digits right there to something like FF. I want to save this, and then if we refresh right now, we should be able to have like something like a blue background right there. So, and you can do a number of things like that. You can keep on like combining values to be able to get that. If you want to get black background, set everything to 0, and if you save that, you should be able to have black background right there. Let me just refresh and check. So have black background right there. If you want to change the background to white, you can actually use F throughout. So this is going to be 6 Fs right there. And if you save, so let's make sure that this is actually 6, okay? So the 7th character in here should always be that of the hash, okay? So let's make sure we save this, and if we refresh our web page, you notice that the background should not be white, okay? So you don't have to like kind of bother yourself so much on cramming these values that we have in here. As you use them, they will become part of you, okay? So even me myself, I don't have these things like crammed in my memory. So what I normally do is to make sure that as I keep using them, I'm going to be getting them. And if you are stuck at any point, you can actually Google those colors, and then they'll give you the hexadecimal value or equivalent to it, okay? And you can also reduce these values that we have in here. If you want to like still print out white background, you can take away 3 right here and then save. You are going to notice that you are still going to have a white background right there, okay? So if you want to have something like a gray background, if I change this to something like CCC like that and save, I should have something like a gray background right there. So let's refresh, you see that we'll have something like a gray background. So pretty cool, guys. So let's just see about how to work with that of the HTML colors. So being able to take a look at common color names, which are the ones you probably know, things like purple, yellow, blue, black, red. So you can actually use that common color names if you want. And if you don't want to use that, if you want to combine something like RGB colors, you can actually combine them the way that we did it in this video. And after that, we'll take a look at hexadecimal values, which is the last one we just did right now.